Hey guys, in this video we're making a beautiful wire wrapped pearl bracelet. This design has simple individual links that we've linked together and we've placed a little metal clasp on for our closure. You can use whatever bead you like for this design and it will turn out beautiful. For our design today we're using 20 gauge dead soft silver wire. We've also got our beautiful freshwater pearls that are drilled as beads. And we've got 2 metal jump rings and a metal clasp. We will be using our basic jewellery making pliers and we have a ruler as well. Now for each link on our bracelet we need about 3 inches of our 20 gauge dead soft silver wire. I use 9 or 10 in a bracelet, so I just go ahead and cut a bunch of 3-inch lengths. Now for our first link, grabbing one of our 3-inch pieces of wire and then measuring back 1 inch from the end. Grabbing that point with our pliers and then placing a bend in the wire. Now with our round nose pliers, grabbing just above the bend and also grabbing about halfway along the tips of our round nose pliers. Now bending the end of that wire around our round nose pliers and across the other wire. Forming a loop on the end here. Now we bring this little tail around the other piece of wire a couple of times to lock it in place. Bringing those wraps around nice and tight and tidy. Once they're around a couple of times, then you can cut this little tail end off and crimp it in tight so there's no sharp edges. So you should have a nice secure loop on one end. Now we can go ahead and place our first bead on. Sliding the bead up as far as it will go. Now holding that left side loop straight up and down and coming in with our pliers as close as you can to the bead and pushing that wire backwards to form a bend. Now grabbing it just above the bend with our round nose pliers. Again, about halfway along our tips and bringing this wire around the round nose pliers and across the other wire. Bringing this tail end of wire around that other wire a couple of times, hoping to match these loops with the loops on the other side of the bead. Bringing them around nice and tight and tidy. Then you can cut this tail end off and crimp it down so there's no sharp edges. Now you should have your first beautiful little bracelet link. Now every other link we're going to attach onto the previous link. We're also going to try and keep them all looking the same with the same size loops and twists so that our bracelet looks nice and even the whole way along. Now with our next piece of wire, measuring 1 inch back from the end, grabbing that point with our pliers and pushing it back to form a bend. Now with our round nose pliers, grabbing it just above the bend, bringing that wire around the round nose pliers and across over the other wire. Now at this point, we don't wrap it around that wire. We need to attach it to the previous link. So placing that link into that loop on the end that you made. Now we can bring this tail end of wire around the other wire to secure that end loop in place. Bringing it around nice and tight and tidy a couple of times. Remember, we're trying to match each link up to be exactly the same. So try and get into a rhythm with how many loops you're doing. Once you're happy with it, you can cut that tail off short and crimp it in tight so there's no sharp edges. Once you're happy with it, then we place our next bead on and make another loop for the other end. So once your bead's on, sliding it down as far as it will go. Now I hold each loop on the left hand side straight up and down and then grab as close as we can with the pliers, pushing that wire back to form a bend. Then with our round nose pliers, grabbing just above the bend, bringing that wire around the round nose pliers and across the other wire, forming a loop on the end. Now we can bring this tail right around a couple of times, nice and tight and tidy to match the other side of our link. Once you're happy with it, cut that tail off nice and short and crimp it in tight so there's no sharp edges. Now we just continue attaching our links together until your bracelet is as long as you want it. So grabbing another piece of wire, measuring in 1 inch from the end, grabbing it with our pliers and making a bend. Grabbing it just above the bend with our round nose pliers and bringing the wire around and across the other wire. Now don't forget to place your previous links into this little loop before wrapping your wire around. Once it's sitting in there, bring your tail around a couple of times to secure it in place. Cutting that tail off nice and short and crimping it in tight. Now placing your bead on, sliding it down as far as it will go, holding the left side straight up and down and grabbing with your pliers as close as you can. Making a bend and grabbing just above the bend with your round nose pliers. Bringing that tail end of wire around and then doing it up nice and tight to secure your link in place. Cutting that tail off and crimping it in tight. Once your bracelet is down almost at your desired length, then we can pop a metal clasp on. The clasp adds about 1 centimetre, and I like my finished bracelets to be about 19 or 20 centimetres long. So just grabbing our jump ring and twisting it apart, then placing one of our links in the jump ring and our clasp. Then twisting it to do our jump ring back up again. Now opening another jump ring for the other end, twisting it open and placing it onto the other end of our bracelet. You don't have to use a jump ring on this end, but I find it's much easier to clip on if you do. So there's your beautiful wire wrapped link bracelet.